to Anguilla. Let us pray. The book of Romans chapter 3 verse 1 says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no other authority except that which God has established." Father, we thank you this moment for this day you've given us as you come before you in intercession for this nation and for this house. Today we lift before you your servants, all who lead this nation. We ask that your blessings, your strength be with them throughout their deliberations today. May your grace be with us. Guide them through every decision that they make. We pray that through their services, our nation may be a place of peace and stability. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. You may be seated. Good morning, honorable members. I call upon the clerk to proceed with the order paper.
Confirmation of minutes. Minutes of proceedings of the 16th meeting of the first session of the 13th Anguilla House of Assembly.
Members, you have before you the minutes of the 16th meeting, which was held this week on the 24th of February. Are there any amendments, corrections to these minutes? Hearing no corrections or amendments, I invite a mover to move that these minutes be confirmed as laid.
Speaker, I move that the minutes be confirmed as circulated.
Thank you, member. Is there a seconder?
Speaker, I rise to second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the minutes of the 16th meeting dated 24th February 2026 as circulated be confirmed. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Oaths of allegiance to new members, none. Announcements by the direction of the Speaker.
I continue to inform the Assembly that I have apologies from the Honorable Member for Sandy Hill, the Honorable Premier, who is away on duty travel. I see that the Honorable Member for West End is back with us, so welcome back. And I have apologies for the absence of the Honorable Leader of Opposition.
Questions? None. Government statements on recent developments? None. Papers? None. Reports from committees? None. Petitions? None. Government notices? None. Private members' notices? None. Motions? Motion 3 of 2026, 1/13 HOA in the matter of compulsory acquisition of land.
Honorable members, you have before you motion 3 of 2026, 1 of the 13th session in the matter of compulsory acquisition of land. I invite the mover to present this motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning to you. Good morning to the House. Good morning to the people of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, I rise to move motion 3, 2026, 1/13, House of Assembly, in the matter of compulsory acquisition of land. And Madam Speaker, if I can go through the resolution.
Sure, you may proceed. However, I do like when I ask for a second,
Okay.
just so I don't forget when the
Right.
time comes. And I recognize the Honorable Single Island White Bantam.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second.
Thank you. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The resolution, I read, whereas it is enacted by Section 2 of the Land Acquisition Act, RSA CL 10, that if the Governor and Council considers that any land should be acquired for a public purpose, he may, with the approval of the House of Assembly, cause a declaration to that effect to be made by the Secretary to the Executive Council in the manner provided by that section. Whereas the Governor and Council has approved the redevelopment and expansion of Runway Extension Master Plan Phase 3 and considers that certain lands at Tanglewood more particularly described in the schedule hereto, should be acquired to facilitate this development. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the House of Assembly signifies its approval for a declaration being made as required by said Act for the acquisition of those lands at Registration Section Southeast, Block 79013B, Parcel 257, part of being 43.50 acres, registered to Conch Bay Development Limited. Block 78913B, Parcel 336, being 16 acres, registered to Conch Bay Development Limited. And Block 78913B, Parcel 334, part of being 21 acres, registered to Conch Bay Development Limited. Block 78913B, Parcel 333, being 8.11 acres, registered to Bonnis Lake for public purpose, namely the redevelopment and expansion of the runway extension. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall come into force immediately on the passage thereof. Madam Speaker, this ends the resolution. Thank you.
Member, do you wish to make contributions to it now, or would you wish me to open the floor for debate on it and then you make your reply?
You can open the floor first.
Okay, the floor is open for contributions and debate in respect of the motion 3 of 2026. Are there any contributions from the floor? I recognize the Honorable Single Island Wide Electoral District Member Vanterpool.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good day to yourself, to the members on both sides of the aisle, those present, the House of Assembly staff, and to all Anguillians which may be listening via multiple means. I rise today in support of this motion and in support of my colleague, the Minister of Lands, as we move forward with acquiring the lands that are essential and critical for the expansion of our airport's runway. Madam Speaker, this has not been a short process at all. In fact, as we celebrate today our one-year anniversary in office, this feels like a recurring theme that we have been dealing with day in and day out. So while it's been a long and somewhat tumultuous journey, I'm grateful to be able to stand here in support to see that we have at least gotten to this point where we're now seeing the light and being able to move forward. Madam Speaker, I can't say that this is just the vision of this administration because it would be unfair to do so. In fact, airport development is something that has been a consistent theme across administrations. The first airport master plan, Madam Speaker, was developed to span the years 1998 to 2008. And I will take that with a grain of salt because there was one person who was telling me they're not sure if it was 1988 or if it was in fact 1888 to 2008. But the fact of the matter is, Madam Speaker, the first phase of the runway extension took place in 2003. The lands that were acquired for that runway extension, the process started in the early 2000s. When the process began in 2003, Madam Speaker, it wrapped up in 2004, taking the runway's length from 3,000 feet where it originally stood to about 5,000 feet where it stands today. And while this allowed, Madam Speaker, the first jets to arrive in Anguilla in December of 2004, January of 2005, that land acquisition matter that took place in the early 2000s was one that resulted in a long-standing litigation, one that only concluded in the courts initially in 2016 before going further to a court of appeal and then ultimately the Privy Council, which rendered their decision in 2022. So, Madam Speaker, one thing that we could have learned from that is that this is a complex process. It could very well be a long-standing process, as we see, one that resulted in deliberations in the courts for the better parts of 2 decades. So this administration has been very careful in making sure that we followed the due process. We have dotted every I, crossed every T, as per the guidelines of the Land Acquisition Act. I want to pay particular thanks to our new Attorney General, who has, since assuming her office here in Anguilla, given particular dedication to this matter at hand, seeing that it was the priority not only of the previous administration, but also recognized by this administration as the top priority for government going forward. So, Madam Speaker, I also want to commend my colleague across the aisle, who was the previous Minister of Infrastructure, as Anguilla's second airport master plan, which spanned the years 2022 to 2041, was adopted under his leadership. Since coming into office, the second phase of the airport master plan would have stated that it was government's intention to increase the runway's length from where it stands now at 5,000 feet to 6,000 feet, with the long-term plan over 20 years of extending it to 7,000 feet. And I am aware that conversations took place under the previous administration where they would have indicated that they want to change direction of the airport master plan, and we're looking into extending at 7,000 feet in this first instance, Madam Speaker. So that's where we took up the baton and we kept on running. Because under this administration, we would have gone to Executive Council and we would have gotten an annex produced to the master plan and formally adopted Executive Council's direction to move to 7,000 feet in the first instance, as opposed to waiting until the 20-year timeline, as well as had the airport master plan updated to reflect the same as government's intention. So, Madam Speaker, as we are here today, I am sure that this motion is one that will be supported not only by members on this side of the aisle, but I believe that today will be a day of unity as both government and opposition understand the importance and significance of this project taking place at this time for the benefit of the people of Anguilla, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I just want to thank particularly everyone who has played a role in getting us to this point. Particularly, I would want to single out Mr. Leslie Jason Hodge as the Director of Lands. The Lord knows that I've promised him some vitamins because he said that I made him run out his stock. And I know between me and the minister being on him on a daily basis, he has done more than his fair share in helping us get to this point. So we want to thank him and his team at the Department of Lands, as well as I also, from my team, would like to thank my principal assistant secretaries, both Mr. Travis Carty and particularly Mr. Kendall Richardson, who have also played a critical role in assisting us in getting to this point at this time. I wouldn't want to exhaust the full list of names, Madam Speaker, for fear of omitting someone, but I do think it's fair, and I think it would be remiss of me if I did not highlight those names and signify the roles that they played in assisting us to getting to this point. So, Madam Speaker, once again, I give my support for this motion. I look forward to hearing the contributions of the other members. And once the lands have been completely acquired, I look forward to moving and working with the team within my ministry, as well as all other stakeholders, to ensuring the runway extension happens for the people of Anguilla. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Single Island White Electoral District Member Rogers.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too rise in support of this resolution. And being the senior citizen in this honorable house, Madam Speaker, I would tap my memory in terms of going back to discussions concerning airports in Anguilla. Madam Speaker, as a teenager, I would recall that airport discussions would have taken place 4 decades ago concerning airport. There were discussions about airport and airport development in Brimagin, Madam Speaker. There were discussions about the possibility of an airport, Madam Speaker, on Scrub Island, Madam Speaker. And of course, discussions that were centered around the expansion of the then Wall Blake Airport, which is now the Clayton J. Lloyd International Airport. And Madam Speaker, there is no doubt that the past administration, whether the leader of government business at the time was Sir Emil Gums, whether it was Ronald Webster, whether it was Hubert Hughes, whether it was Osborne Fleming, all honorable, whether it was Victor Banks, whether it was Dr. Ellis Lorenzo Webster, and now the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge. Madam Speaker, I could think of no better public purpose than the expansion of our airport. I believe ports in general, and it's not just my belief, Madam Speaker, it is a fact. Just about everything we consume here in this beautiful land of ours comes in, whether it's through Blowing Point, whether it's through Road Bay, Madam Speaker, as it is now. It used to be the Forest Bay at one time. Everything comes in, Madam Speaker. And as a result of that, ports, in terms of the development of our ports, whether it's the seaport or the airport, is of paramount importance to the elevation of this nation and to the improvement of the quality of life for Anguillians here at home. And Madam Speaker, the record is there with respect to the distractions and objections for one reason or another in terms of the development of our airport that we have here now. And as we know, Madam Speaker, Anguillians are very particular about their land. And government has the ability to acquire land for a public purpose. Again, how do we define public purpose? But from my own perspective, a public purpose, this, in terms of definition of a public purpose, is clear. The other public purpose, Madam Speaker, that my limited comprehension skills would indicate to me is development of our young people. I believe, Madam Speaker, in terms of acquisition of land, property, the development of our ports, and the development of our young people is of paramount importance going forward. I would also, Madam Speaker, take this opportunity and agree with my colleague in terms of congratulating the former Minister of Infrastructure for the work that he and the previous administration would have done in terms of airport development. Of course, there's nothing in this world that will not be criticized, rightfully or wrongfully. But at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, the work that the previous administration would have done in terms of development of the airport to what we have it now is commendable. It is incumbent upon us now to improve on what is there. We have a brand new terminal building, and we know that the aircrafts don't land on a terminal building. And in order to improve and to increase, Madam Speaker, the tentacles of our tourism industry, we must be able to bring in larger aircrafts, Madam Speaker, and to accommodate larger aircrafts, Madam Speaker, the length of the runway is part and parcel of that. So I have no hesitation, Madam Speaker, in supporting this resolution because I think it is absolutely necessary. I believe that we are at a time where there's no other option, so to speak, in terms of developing our airport facilities. It has my full support, and it will continue to have my full support. The acquisition of land I'm speaking about now, in terms of port development and for development of facilities for our young people. So, Madam Speaker, this public purpose, to me, is a no-brainer. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the honorable member for Valley North.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Pleasant good morning to the members of the House and those listening via live, Facebook, and radio. Madam Speaker, this morning I rise in support of this motion. I also wish to extend gratitude to my honorable colleague, the honorable single-wide member, island-wide member, Mr. Kyle Hodge, for the work that him and his team have done in relation to the overall land acquisition. As my other colleague indicated, it has been quite a journey and a process. I also want to thank the AG for the work that she has done, as well as Mr. Jason Hodge for the work that they've done throughout this entire process. I don't think it is a surprise that we are progressing in this manner, because while I sat on the opposition benches during the moments when I was permitted the opportunity to speak in this honorable House, I was very adamant about the importance of runway expansion. And I was adamant about that, Madam Speaker, because after having quite a bit of experience in airport development, in routes development generally, I understood the importance of the extension of the runway. As someone who has sat with multiple airline companies and had different discussions with them on different levels, I understand the importance of the runway extension. And I believe that this is an important step in the process of ensuring that generally the island has a fit-for-purpose port facility that is in line with the tourism expansion and the appetite that exists globally. Anguilla has positioned itself as a remarkably safe destination. We have exceptional accommodations, some of the best in the region, and it is very important that our access is in line with the accommodations that we offer. Of course, the general product generally that we offer on island, exceptional restaurants, amazing people, beautiful beaches. And it's very important that we ensure that we maximize on our access. So this is a very important step in the process of ensuring that that runway expansion can be realized and that we can maximize the economic potential of the facility. We have recently spent millions of dollars, Madam Speaker, in a terminal building. And in order for us to really see the value of those funds, we must, Madam Speaker, extend the runway. Because with the building of the terminal building alone, we will not be able to attract the level of airlift and access that we need to really ensure that we get value for money in terms of what we have already spent. So again, I wish to put on record my sincerest gratitude to the team who has been working in this land acquisition process. I think it is no doubt that this acquisition is in the public interest. This will be one of the singular largest projects probably that our island and government will ever undertake in our lifetime. But it is critically important. It is critically important for the development of our economy, for the sustainability of the tourism industry in this extremely competitive market. We are competing with many tourism destinations in the region, some who only got into the tourism business maybe 15 to 25 years ago, when we have been in it far longer. But one of the things that a number of these countries have been able to do very quickly is they've been able to fix their access issues. So Anguilla, in order for us to stay competitive, we also need to ensure that we rapidly expand and solve our access issue, because there's no issue in relation to the product that we offer. Anguilla has an exceptional product to offer, but we need to ensure that our access marries that product. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member. I recognize the honorable member for West End.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise as well to support this motion. Madam Speaker, what you'll find is that as government or governments, we all want to do what is in the best interests of the people of Anguilla. The question is, how do we get there? And I suppose that's why you tend to have opposition. Sometimes it is, they see it differently, but I think majority of the time, Madam Speaker, I think we all know, whether we're in opposition or not, as to what is in the best interests of our island. Madam Speaker, again, when you follow a few speakers, it's hard to sound original, but the fact is, you need to rise to give your support. And what I would say is that for a number of years, Anguilla has been regarded as one of those islands in the Caribbean that many people would want to come to. So you might hear of Anguilla, and the next question is, how do you get there? And for a number of persons, especially if you want to go to a destination, but if you want to spend 4 or 5 days at that destination, but it takes you 2 days to go and come, it is not so attractive anymore. Of course, when you look throughout the Caribbean, and as much as we as a Caribbean region want to work together, and it is important we work together, but there's a reason why we all want to be number one, because we want to be independent enough to be able to say, if you want to come to us, you could come directly to us. We appreciate what our neighbors next door have done for us over the years, but we ourselves, if we can have persons come directly to us. In recent times, Bermuda Air and Anguilla Air has been a huge fillip for us here in Anguilla, because persons in Boston, Newark, and Washington, Baltimore, for them to be able to have a direct flight to Anguilla means a lot. And we do know that if New York itself or Toronto, London can fly directly to Anguilla, they will come. They will come. As my colleague mentioned, the Honorable Shelia Rogers-Webster, we are a destination that have the quality. Starts with our people, our infrastructure, and our God-given gifts, whether it's the beaches and the likes. So, Madam Speaker, this is something that Anguilla needs. We need that extension on the runway. It's no point knowing that something is beautiful somewhere, but you can't get to it. So, Madam Speaker, I rise to support this.
Thank you, member. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the honorable member for Road South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. We are here today. It has been a long road that started way back in the 1960s. And in 1967, we had a revolution. And that revolution emanated from the fact that the government of St. Kitts, Nevis, Anguilla at the time, led by Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw, decided that they should move into independence, and statehood was being granted for the British government. And the people of Anguilla revolted because we thought that we were neglected. We had no running water. As a matter of fact, the Honorable Single-Lord member, Mr. Neil Rogers, he spoke of the times where they had to put their toes going down to the fountain to retrieve fresh water on a long walk. And many persons, even before us, had much more arduous journeys in order to have fresh water and to eat. History will tell us that there was a time there was famine and droughts in Anguilla, and the animals died, and the crops died, and people died. And the British government was reached out to, as we are a colony of the British government. And out of the parliament in England, they said, not a single white man dwells among them. That was said, that's a historical fact. And so they decided eventually to move all of the residents of Anguilla to British Guyana, which was also a colony of England. Some went, but most stayed and eked out a living. And following the revolution, Madam Speaker, no one from England moved a muscle. But then in 1969, there was another revolution of sorts where the government of Anguilla, the quasi-government of Anguilla, had a referendum. And this referendum was for independence from England because we were neglected for hundreds of years. We were neglected from the time they kidnapped us out of Africa, brought us to Anguilla, realized that the soil was poor and the rainfall sparse, and left us here to die. We were neglected for hundreds of years. And then, once we became an independent republic, the rumors started to circulate that we were taken over by gangsters. And so the British needed to come and put those gangsters under heel. And they invaded with the might of the army, Madam Speaker. And following that, negotiations began about Anguilla's development. And the British government in 1969, 1970, all the way to 1972 promised that they will develop our roads, our air and seaports, water, electricity. That was the deal. And the only thing that was holding up the deal was whether it would be in a phased approach or whether it be all at once. And the government of the day decided it would be in a phased approach. Needless to say, every one of those promises were violated. And Madam Speaker, in 1972, there was the Anguilla Council. This is before we had the 1976 Constitution. In that Anguilla Council, the British government sought to exert their authority. And they overrode everything that would be considered under Executive Council remit. And those revolutionaries who made up the Anguilla Council decided that they will not be sitting until they had a change. And the change came, Madam Speaker. In 1976, following the writing of the Anguilla Constitution, that was primarily written by Dame Bernice Lake QC, in which we are standing here today to acquire those lands. We had a constitution that gave us tremendous strength and authority, Madam Speaker. And we had our first constituency elections of 7 seats. There were only 3 ministers at a time, 7 seats. And in those 7 seats, Madam Speaker, under the leadership of the Honorable Father of the Nation, in which we will be celebrating in a few short days, he won 6 of the 7 seats. The lone opposition member, Madam Speaker, was one Hubert Benjamin Hughes of South Hill. Lone opposition. And together, following the election, the members of Ronald Webster's government contacted Mr. Hughes, Hubert Hughes, who was my father, and to discuss moving a motion of no confidence to remove Ronald from Anguilla's political life. And so in 1977, a mere year after the election, the no confidence motion was moved by the lone member of the opposition, Hubert Hughes, and was supported by members of Mr. Webster's government. And the government did not collapse because the Constitution allowed for someone to be able to assume the chief minister's role or the premier's role, as we now call it. And Madam Speaker, and I say in all this to say something, right? I'm going to get to that, but I need to give some historical context as we celebrate all of these celebrations that we'll be celebrating over the next few days. And while they were sitting under a blolly tree, very close here, to discuss who will take the leadership of the country, the only man in Anguilla that has ever been knighted, Mr. Emile Gomes, went down to the commissioner at the time. It was not a governor, was called a commissioner, same thing as a governor today, and got himself sworn in as the chief minister of Anguilla. And the others were not happy. And because they were not happy, even though the government lasted until 1980, they all left him. And in the 1980 elections, the Anguilla United Party, which became the Anguilla United Movement, which became the Anguilla Progressive Movement, won 6 of the 7 seats, with Emile Gomes barely holding on to his seat in Road North, Madam Speaker. And Hubert Hughes was the founder and the leader, but James Ronald Webster became the chief minister. But in 1981, all the discussions relating to the airport development continued. And James Ronald Webster decided that we should start looking at possibilities for an international airport. Brimagin was identified as a possible site. Scrub Island was identified as another possible site. But it seemed as if, and it appeared as if Brimagin would be the more feasible site than Scrub Island. because Rhode Island had a number of complexities. Given the fact that it's an offshore key, you perhaps have to do a bridge to the mainland, and many other factors, including environmental factors, may have been considered. I'm not saying they were considered, I'm saying may have been considered. And Brimaging was identified. And the government of James Ronald Webster at the time, inclusive of Hubert Hughes, and that is when Mr. Victor Banks came back to Anguilla to serve as a special advisor in the government of the Anguilla United Party with James Ronald Webster and Hubert Hughes. And Madam Speaker, the decision was made by Hubert Hughes and James Ronald Webster, the leader and the chief minister, that Brimaging, we will prohibit construction in Brimaging to ensure that we have the lands for the airport development. Madam Speaker. And so that barrier from development of houses and so forth in Brimaging was put in place. And lands were exchanged across the island, Madam Speaker, for that airport development. Even in the valley area, all where you see Odin Smith and Remy Lake and Bummy Lake and all those, a lot of those properties, Madam Speaker, a lot of those lands were also exchanged. Those are exchange of lands and so forth. But a lot of lands were exchanged. And from that time, but before I say it, in 1981, the government started to fall apart. And actually, the government collapsed. But by that time, James Ronald Webster had changed the Constitution to ensure that if there ever a motion of no confidence, you have to go back to the polls, Madam Speaker. And in 1981, James Ronald Webster came back to government again. But this time, with a different government, because Hubert Hughes, who resigned in protest for the firing of a minister of government by the name of Claudius Roberts, he lost his seat to Maurice Connor in Road South. And the government of 1981 included Mr. Victor Franklin Banks, who was elected representative for Valley North, Mr. Maurice Connor, the elected representative for Valley South, Mr. Osborne Fleming, etc., Madam Speaker. But by 1984, again, an election was called. And we had an entire shift in politics, Madam Speaker, in that the Anguilla National Alliance, precursor to the Anguilla United Front, came to office under the leadership of Mr. Emile Gomes, Madam Speaker. And they too wanted to develop an commercial international airport for Anguilla, Madam Speaker. As a matter of fact, Emile Gomes in 1984, when he became chief minister, he was also the Minister of Tourism and Lands. And together with his Minister of Social Development and Infrastructure, the Honorable Albina Lake Hodge, who is the sister of Dame Bernice Lake QC. See it all ties in. Wrote a letter to the government of Taiwan. Imagine that, British colony, with agreements dating back to the 1960s from the British government. Wrote a letter to the government of Taiwan. And the letter stated, we are a small island at the threshold of independence, and pre-independence infrastructure is needed, namely a commercial international airport. Today, if the ambassador of Taiwan wants to come to Anguilla, the governor will send you a letter and say, do not address him as ambassador, him or her. Address him as Mr., because we have no diplomatic relations with Taiwan. That's what they would say. And I know that for a fact because they say that before. And Madam Speaker, we are looking at that consideration also the government of Canada developing an airport. Where was the British promise? Nowhere to be found, Madam Speaker. But as fate may have it, Ms. Albina Lake Hodge died soon thereafter while she was in office. And there was a by-election in Valley South where Mr. Banks again ran after losing the seat in Valley North to Mr. Eric Reid. He ran in Valley South against persons like David Carty and Alan Gomes, Madam Speaker. And as you know, Mr. Banks won that seat and retained that seat for a number of years, Madam Speaker. But Hubert Hughes, Victor Banks, and Albert Hughes remained in opposition from 1984 all the way up to 1994. And the Anguilla National Alliance Administration, even though the initial stages, they said they wanted to develop the airport, not a lot happened as it relates to that, but the intention was there. And in 1994, when Hubert Hughes became the chief minister, he set out to develop this airport. So much so that it is a matter of historical record. And the records are also there, including drawings and designs and some studies done at the Ministry of Infrastructure, Madam Speaker, was done by the French government because the British government was not moving to assist in the development of the airport. And those designs were agreed upon to develop the airport in Birmingham, Madam Speaker. But that administration was short-lived because following the election of March of 1999, Mr. Banks, who was the coalition partner in that government, resigned 2 months later in May of 1999. And by March of 2000, a new administration came to office under the Anguilla United Front. And it was not officially the Anguilla United Front, may I add. It was Anguilla National Alliance and Anguilla Democratic Party, siblings of it, and they became the front, the Anguilla United Front. Officially, they became the Anguilla United Front in 2005, when Neil Rogers joined the team. But Madam Speaker, when Osborne Fleming became the Chief Minister of Anguilla, the direction of airport development changed dramatically. Osborne Fleming decided that Anguilla did not need a commercial international airport, and this was the position of the government. Now, I don't believe Mr. Banks really supported that idea. But as I know Mr. Banks as he is, because I've had lots of conversations with him, because remember, he served in my father's government for 5+ years. He always said, Hayden, I like to take the least confrontational approach. The least confrontational approach, and I know Neil Rogers, the single elected member, knows him very well, and he can attest to that fact. He likes to take the least, as much diplomacy as he can use, but the least confrontational approach, Madam Speaker. And so he did not really challenge Osborne Fleming. And the decision was made that Birmingham, the folks who own land in Birmingham, can now develop their lands because we're no longer seeking to develop a commercial international airport. And the decision was also made to extend the runway at Clayton Lloyd to facilitate American Airlines ATR 72. Now, that is what was stated publicly, but that was not the truth. Because, Madam Speaker, on being Parliamentary Secretary responsible for tourism, having 20 years in the hospitality sector, in all aspects of the hospitality sector, from raking leaves where I started in landscaping, watering plants with a hose, all the way up to being an executive. And Madam Speaker, when the airport closed in 2002 or thereabout, for the extension, the work at the runway, it was said that this was the reason. American Airlines was moving from an ATR 42 to an ATR 72, which was a bigger prop plane. And so you needed an extended runway. That was what said. That was what said. But when I became the Parliamentary Secretary, myself, along with Director of Tourism, Ms. Candice Niles, and the Chairman of the Tourist Board, Mr. Yusef Kishad, traveled to San Juan to meet with Mr. Michael Rios, who was the head of American Eagle in the Caribbean, because American Eagle had said they were stopping their flights into Anguilla and the rest of the region. They were pulling out because they were losing money. Mind you, Madam Speaker, before the decision was made to close the Clayton J. Lloyd International, the Wall-Blake Airport, let me get it right, the Wall-Blake Airport, which is now the Clayton J. Lloyd International, the Wall-Blake Airport, before that decision was made, there was a number of discussions as it relates to it, including from the hospitality sector, because I attended those meetings. And we made a number of proposals because at the time, Madam Speaker, Anguilla received up to 4 American Eagle flights out of San Juan. Up to 4. 3 during the day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the mid-afternoon, 1 late in the afternoon, and then when things got hot, even up to 11 o'clock at night. That was the frequency of the American Airlines flights into Anguilla out of San Juan. San Juan was our hub. That was a major hub into Anguilla. Not St. Martin, San Juan. St. Martin was great for day trippers, but San Juan was a major hub, Madam Speaker. Lots of tourists came in through St. Martin too, but San Juan was important. And so we in the hospitality sector at the time had to scramble to figure out how are we going to get these people here? Because we have to change our whole marketing as it relates to routes and so forth. And then we decide, under the leadership of Eustace Guichard, to build boats to be able to shuttle people into Anguilla from St. Martin. And that decision was made. And eventually, a charter boat business, starting with link ferries owned by Franklin Connor, started between Phillipsburg, Simpson Bay, and Anguilla. And Madam Speaker, that business developed. But in 2004, the Waalbeek Airport opened with a new extension. And by that time, the American Airlines flights started coming in one a day, sometimes none at all. But what came in a big way is private jets. And we signed an FBO agreement with Mr. David Lloyd of Lloyd's Aviation for a period of 10 years, which eventually, in the latter part of 2009 into February of 2010, it was extended to 25 years, set to expire in 2035, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, it was all about the ATR part two. I can remember in a consultation, Mr. Sherman Haskins, in his wisdom, saying to Mr. Banks, do we have written guarantee from American Airlines that once this airport opens, you're going to continue those flights? And he said no. But why not? Suppose they don't come. Well, we cross that bridge when they get there. So we all thought that the airport was for the ATR 72. Until while I was parliamentary secretary, there was a radio show and television show being hosted by, at the time, the chief advisor to the Anguilla United Front, Mr. Fabian Marcel Foy, and Mr. John Benjamin. And they invited me short notice to be a guest on that show. A lot of people advised me not to go, but you know, you should never run away from the people. And so I attended the show. And during that show, a question was asked, because if we go back a little bit, when we came to office in 2010, a lot of our guests was coming out of St. Martin. And what happened, Madam Speaker, is this. Because of the way the business operates on the Dutch side of St. Martin, because that's where the majority of our luxury guests was coming through, Dutch St. Martin, using the charter boats. We had a huge issue, especially during the season, where persons could land in St. Martin and it could take up to 2.5 hours, sometimes more, to get to Anguilla, a 20-minute boat ride, Madam Speaker. And that is because the yachts took priority. And during that peak time, the bridge will be lifted and only those yacht persons will be facilitated, Madam Speaker. And so we started some discussions. Leslie Lloyd, Eustace Guichard, myself, with the government of St. Martin, in particular, Mr. Roland Duncan, who was the Minister of Justice, Madam Speaker, about us developing a facility in St. Martin to be able to facilitate our guests. And we decided we're going to lease some land in St. Martin, develop a port facility in St. Martin. And it came under tremendous criticism, Madam Speaker. Tremendous. We didn't have any funding, so we reached out to the hotel partners, and Mr. Leandro Rizzuto, Mr. Barry Steinlich, and others stepped up and said they will contribute tremendously, Madam Speaker. And out of the taxpayers of Anguilla, there was about $1 million that was expended on that facility, Madam Speaker, in St. Martin. So important was that facility. And everything changed. Instead of the 2.5 hours, people were getting to Anguilla in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I took blows for that decision for 5 years. But in this interview, Madam Speaker, and it's very important to understand in this interview, may John Benjamin rest in peace, the question was asked by Mr. Marcel Foy to myself. Do you think it was a good use of government's taxpayers' dollars to build a facility in St. Martin costing $1 million? And I said yes, because at the time, 91% of our tourists came through St. Martin. 91%. Just over 7% came through the the Waalbeek Airport. Well, it was, at that time, it was the Clayton J. Lloyd, because Evan Gomes under the Anguilla United Movement had the name changed from Waalbeek Airport to the Clayton J. Lloyd International Airport. And he too came under severe criticism for dubbing it an international airport in the language, so much so that persons spray painted the signs that was there on the airport road. They defaced the signs with spray paint. And for weeks, there was a number of articles criticizing the government for calling it an international airport until Mr. Banks spoke. And Mr. Banks spoke and he said, the same thing that Evan Gomes and Hubert Hughes was saying, Mr. Banks reiterated, the fact that we accommodate flights from outside of Anguilla, therefore means it's an international airport. All the noise stopped. And that is why I say politicians have more power than preachers, than pastors. All the noise stopped. It was as if Moses took his staff and parted the Red Sea. It all stopped, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, in that interview, the question was asked. And I said, yes. I said, because if 91% of our tourists is coming through Blowing Point, and 7% is coming through the airport, don't you think it was a good return on investment that we spent $1 million or less? And we don't know how much we spend at the airport. It's $80 million and counting. Because to date, Madam Speaker, the records will show that to date, we are still spending money for the airport development that happened in 2002 to 2004. There are a number of persons who are still have issues out, pending. And the Honorable Joseph Van Der Poel can attest to this fact. A number from then. So the books ain't even closed on that, Madam Speaker. They're not even closed. But Mr. Foy said, well, the reason why it wasn't for the ATR 72 wasn't for the ATR 72. I said, but that was a stated reason. He said, I was a permanent secretary, and that wasn't the reason. So I said, what is the reason then? And he said, I will not answer that. And that was the last show. It's not the show after that. But never give us a real reason. So today, we don't know the real reason. But, Madam Speaker,
Honorable member.
Yes.
We have a motion before
Yeah,
us,
I
though, and I'm
understand.
mindful that there are other members that want to speak, so I'd want you to address the motion now, please.
Madam Speaker, I'm
Your
addressing the
position.
motion, right?
Okay.
We are paid as parliamentarians. This is
Member,
all-
member, I know you're paid as a parliamentarian. I'm just asking if you're addressing the motion now or not, because it has been quite some time on the historical facts, which I understand are relevant to the airport project, but there appears to be some diatribe that's not relevant to the motion that's on the floor. So I'm just asking you to hasten to the point, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, in an interview that Mr. Fleming had on Cool FM, I called into the show. It was a radio talk show program being hosted by Miss Jackie Reed. She was a radio talk show host at the time. And I asked Mr. Fleming, why is it you're not moving forward with the airport development in Brimagin? He said, Hayden, do you know what the French wanted? Do you know what the French wanted? I said, no, Mr. Fleming, tell us what the French wanted. Tell the public what the French wanted. And he said, the French wanted to develop 4,000 hotel rooms over a period of 15 years. And if you do 4,000 hotel rooms over a period of 15 years, it would mean that we have to import over that period 15,000 people to work based on the numbers of persons in the five-star luxury sector. Capjuluca was 98 rooms, and they had about 400 employees. So that was the math. 4,000 hotel rooms over 15 years. So you develop the airport, this is what it's going to take in order to make it feasible. So we'd have had the dual effect of increasing our population. But, Madam Speaker, between the period of 2002 and 2008, the government of the Anguilla United Front at the time signed 10 memorandums of understanding, of agreement, that would have developed 4,380 hotel rooms in less than that 15 years without the airport. And every single developer that has come to our shows asking about airport. Everyone. And every one of them we promised we'll do airport. And so much developers came to our shows after we unveiled the airport master plan and started the work for the airport. But to go back to Mr. Joseph Van Der Poel's point, the singular way the member's point, the airport master plan was a precursor to development. But I want to go back because I want to go back to the United Front. And when the United Front came to office under Victor Banks, they sought an entrustment to have discussions with the Canadian Commercial Cooperation on airport development. Eventually, that went away, not entrustment, but the whole discussions with the Canadian Commercial Cooperation. Because in September of 2017, Boris Johnson, who was the foreign secretary, flew into Anguilla. And when he flew into Anguilla, he did an interview with Mr. Keith Stonegraves live on radio. And without any prodding, he said the most important development he can see for Anguilla is the airport. Airport needs to be developed, and we will be investing in an airport. You know, he denied saying it, even though it was live on radio and recorded. He denied saying it. Boris Johnson denied saying it. That vagabond. Sorry, Madam Speaker, I take that back. I take that back. I take that back.
No, you don't even have to take it back because you're done. Member, and that's the point I was making. You wouldn't have lost your way, and you lost your way just now, if you would stick with the motion. I recognize where you're going. I gave you 30 minutes to go where you were going. I could almost predict every word you were going to say, including the letter to Taiwan, and you still don't have enough time on your feet. Come to the motion. Come to the motion. Speak to the motion.
Madam Speaker.
We appreciate the history, but speak to the motion.
Madam Speaker, I'm speaking to the motion. Perhaps.
Withdraw your comment
Yeah, I
that was
did.
an unparliamentary
I did.
statement about Boris Johnson.
Yeah, I did.
expect.
Even though I did. I did put you on.
Please proceed and wrap up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, denied it. They denied it, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I was going to the point that Mr. Joseph Van der Poel spoke about his 20-year airport master plan. The 20-year master plan was to develop the airport over a 20-year period of time. We decided 20 years was too long to wait, and everything would be fast-tracked, including taking the runway to a minimum of 7,000 feet. A minimum of 7,000 feet. And so while all of the preliminary works are being done, the geotechnical studies, the mapping out of the lands, and all of that work, we decided we're not going to wait until all of that work is completed. We're going to start the development of the airport now. And Madam Speaker, that including the apron, the parallel taxiway, the custom cargo building, and the terminal building, Madam Speaker. And we got a lot of blows. Why are you doing the terminal first? It isn't a matter of doing the terminal first. It was a matter of doing these things while we wait for the preliminary works for the extension to be completed. And that included valuations. That included mapping. And once those valuations was completed, Madam Speaker, in 2024, immediately we went to Executive Council in 2024 and we appointed Mr. Jason Hodge as the land acquisition officer. And in 2024, we also had letters sent to all of the landowners in which we needed those lands to let them know this is where it's at, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we got a lot of licks for it. As a matter of fact, the member for Valley North made a significant post on it as well on her social media platform that I will not have the time to read out, but I'll read out in another forum, Madam Speaker, because I know my time here is limited. But Madam Speaker, the reality is that all of these things were being done in order for us to develop the runway extension to a minimum of 7,000 feet. And meanwhile, while all that was being done, we are also attending routes and having discussions with a number of major commercial carriers, Madam Speaker, from Canada, from the United States, and even out of Latin America, Madam Speaker. And everything was positive, very positive. And so we are here today. And it seems as if we are now moving in the direction to truly finish the plan of James Ronald Webster, the plan of Hubert Benjamin Hughes, the plan of Albina Lake Arch, to ensure that we have a commercial airport that can develop our people. And I am happy to see that the members of the government who was the opposition, who was very critical, Madam Speaker, are now moving quickly ahead to develop this. Now, as it relates to this, Madam Speaker, I look at the schedule, and I realize that the schedule speaks to Bonus Volante Lake Solicitor, a portion of land of 8.1 acres, Kong Bay Development, a portion of land of 16 acres, Kong Bay Development, a portion of land of 21 acres, Kong Bay Development, a portion of land of 43.5 acres. It is my understanding that the portion, the 3.5 acres, was possibly going to, maybe going to public auction. And I don't know, and I'm sure Mr. Hodge, the single void member, Mr. Kyle Hodge, will give us an explanation as to why this is going through this process when there's a significant amount of other lands that is not going through this process. Or perhaps they're going through this process at a later date. I don't know, but I'm sure the minister will give us all of that information so we can all have an understanding of this particular process as it relates to the dozens of other persons who own land in the area, and I'm sure everybody will appreciate that. Madam Speaker, thank you. I had a lot more to say, but thank you very much.
Thank you,
for
member.
holding the time.
Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I invite the mover to reply.
Madam Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to wrap up on this motion. And I want to thank the members on this side of the House for their support, and thank the members on the opposite side for their support as well. Madam Speaker, I want to place on record also my thanks and appreciation to the Director of Lands. He is also, by virtue of being the director, he is also the Land Acquisition Officer. A very stressful job, Madam Speaker, and it is a very thankless job. He's paid no extra, putting this on record for the Deputy Governor who's in this House. He's paid no extra for his role as Land Acquisition Officer. I'm hoping that in his director's salary, that it is included somewhere in there. But if it's not, Madam Speaker, we would hope that we can revisit this, because since being the Minister of Lands, I have seen the work that he puts into it in addition to his ordinary functions. It takes him away from his other duties completely in some instances. You know, I do hope that going forward in the future, you know, we may not need to acquire lands in such a manner. But his position as Land Acquisition Officer is a tireless one, a thankless one, and it's very stressful. I do hope as a cabinet we can set up a good massage for him somewhere at some point so that he can relax himself. And Madam Speaker, I also want to thank the Attorney General for her assistance. Madam Speaker, she came in and it was like jumping on a treadmill running full speed. Baptism by fire coming into Anguilla. So I want to thank her, you know, her training and her experience. It definitely proves that she is fit and able and ready for this position. I thank the Premier and the Cabinet, the Permanent Secretary, for all their hard work leading up to this. Madam Speaker, this motion seeks the approval of this Honorable House to allow for the acquisition for public purpose certain lands in Tanglewood area for the purpose of the redevelopment and expansion of Anguilla's runway. And Madam Speaker, it has been the vision of many administrations, all administrations, Madam Speaker, to develop and expand. Because as a country grows, development and expansion is inevitable. So there's no government, Madam Speaker, that would want to restrict development according to how the country is growing. So, Madam Speaker, the Clayton J. Lloyd International Airport runway expansion is well on its way. An expansion, Madam Speaker, cannot come unless we extend the length of the runway. And extending the length of the runway, Madam Speaker, unfortunately or fortunately, requires land. Land that the government does not have in its possession. Land that is owned by Anguillians. But Madam Speaker, we recognize that we have to go through a process in order to make it seamless, in order to make it fair. And this is why we are here today, Madam Speaker, to continue along with that process to acquire said lands. Madam Speaker, this expansion of the runway will be one of the most valuable infrastructure projects in the history of Anguilla. And I say that, Madam Speaker, because what this expansion will do, and Mr. Connor, Minister of Tourism, Minister of Infrastructure, Joseph Vanterpool, they will be headed off to routes in a matter of days. And they will be able to conform with those interested in opening new connections and new gateways and new possibilities, bigger flights, more seating capacity. They will be able to conform at routes that the expansion of our runway to 7,000 feet is well on its way. But Madam Speaker, the process is the process. And the process is a tough one. It's a long one. And it is a process that will be continued to be meticulously followed to ensure that we treat landowners fair. We are all one people here in Anguilla, Madam Speaker, and we all want to see the best outcome for Anguilla and her people. But growth and expansion comes at a cost. It's called progress. And we are progressing to a bigger economy. We are progressing to a longer runway. And we should all be happy that we're going into that direction and we're moving there in good pace. So, Madam Speaker, this motion simply enables the legal framework to move forward. The legal processes must be followed. Nothing more, nothing less. Land acquisition for public purpose is very tedious under the Land Acquisition Act. And this is the process that we are following in order to utilize the lands while the negotiation continues as it pertains to valuations and what will be decided upon, what will be settled upon as it relates to compensation. It was only recently that both parties, Madam Speaker, would have received valuations. So we look forward to the process being continued. So, Madam Speaker, with that said, I wish to thank you and thank the members of this House for their support.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I shall now put the question. I put the question that the motion 3 of 2026, 1 of the 13th House of Assembly, in the matter of compulsory acquisition of land be approved as a resolution in this House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Personal explanations? None. Other business, government business? A bill for Water Services Department Amendment Act 2026, second reading.
I call upon the mover of this bill, the Honorable Single Island-wide Electoral District Member Hodge.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled A Bill for Water Services Department Act 2026 be read a second time.
Is there a seconder?
Madam Speaker, I rise to second.
It has been moved and seconded that a bill shortly entitled A Bill for Water Services Department Amendment Act 2026 be moved a second time. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. I call upon the mover to outline the objects and reasons, and then we'll open the floor for debate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The objects and reasons for this bill. Clauses 1 sets out the interpretation provision of the bill. Clause 2 inserts new definitions. Clause 3 replaces all references to chief engineer with sorry, let me start from the beginning. Clause 3 replaces all references to chief engineer with director of water services to reflect the department's current leadership structure. Clause 4 introduces additional provisions establishing civil liability for damage to water infrastructure and for the loss of water. Clause 5 provides that the Director of Water Services is responsible for the administration of the Department of Water Services. Clause 6 validates any action or decisions taken by the Director of Water Services following the commencement of the Department of Water Services Act 2024. Clause 7 provides for the citation of the bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does anyone wish to speak to the bill that is on the floor? I recognize the honorable member, Bentable.
Morning, Madam Speaker. Thank you. I rise in support of my colleague and the bill before us this morning. I know that water has been one of the issues that he is most passionate about and that he works on a daily basis to improve the infrastructure and delivery to the people of Anguilla. And while I know that that is not an easy task, Madam Speaker, due to the feedback that I've been hearing from many persons across different communities who have been speaking about the water being on late into the night, being killed with the pressure when the water come on, I must say and commend him for doing an excellent job on this matter, Madam Speaker. But there's only so much he can do without the legislative framework to assist him in this issue, Madam Speaker. I recall that we would have sat in a meeting where we would have had a report on the water loss throughout Anguilla. And it is one thing to see that we often hear it touted that 80% of our water is lost in leaks. And to quantify 80%, Madam Speaker, because it's just a percentage being thrown out there. The reality, first and foremost, is it's not all lost in leaks. 80% of our water is lost through non-revenue water. Non-revenue water, Madam Speaker, for the benefit of the general public, not only includes water lost in leaks, but also illegal connections, i.e. water being stolen from our lines via unauthorized connections, Madam Speaker. The provisions in the legislation are the changes in the amendments before us this morning put some teeth in terms of the legislation in providing a mechanism by which now persons can be held liable for tampering with the lines. This provides not only the legal authority, but the legislative authority to be able to go and say, this line is not authorized by the Department of Water Services. You have technically damaged our lines due to the loss of water you've caused to the system. You can now be held accountable. So, Madam Speaker, while we are here to put this provision in place, I caution all persons who know that they are taking part in a practice that should not be. If you have an illegal line, disconnect it. If you are found to have been tampering with the water, stealing water, there are no provisions in place where you can be legally held liable, which should be a deterrent to your actions. And if not, and if found, you will be held accountable. So, Madam Speaker, I do think that this is a step in the right direction. Not only do I offer my support, but I want to continue to support my colleague and again commend him for the gigantic effort he has placed in addressing Anguilla's water situation. And I know that if he keeps on pushing the way he is and with the passion that he has, that it will not be long before we have 24/7 water across the whole of Anguilla. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? I recognize the honorable member for Valley North.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too rise to commend the Honorable Minister, Mr. Kyle Hodge, responsible for water. From the time we were elected, this has been a top priority for this administration and Mr. Hodge. And Mr. Hodge has been very diligent in ensuring that water has been prioritized. This was reflected during the budgetary process with the amount of money that was assigned to the water process. But in addition to that, even before the new budgetary process, we would have actively engaged additional support to assist us in the area of water development. Additionally, we would have made adjustments to the staffing, support, and complement within water because we recognize that water is a monumental task, but it is a very important and necessary one, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, oftentimes these things are overlooked. On a recent radio interview, Mr. Kyle Hodge indicated that he is on government water supply and he understands the complexities in relation to it. Well, I also, Madam Speaker, wish to put on record that I too am on government's water supply. And I have been on government's water supply for the better part of the last 15 years. So I have seen the highs and lows of the water supply. I've gone through days over the years of rationing of water where you've gone 2 to 3 days without water. And I want the general public to put that into perspective because persons who are on consistent water supplies or have cisterns really can't understand and identify with the challenges in relation to water not being consistent. There have been a number of businesses that have been affected by the lack of water supply. There are even the government of Anguilla in some periods have been affected by that with the inability to provide a constant source of water. Madam Speaker, at the end of the day, you know, we can have all these exceptional infrastructure buildings. We can do all sorts of monumental things to say that we're developing our country. But there are some basic human needs and rights that as a people, we need to ensure that we address, Madam Speaker. And this administration is intent on ensuring that by the end of our first term in office, we ensure that we have constant, consistent, reliable water sources, Madam Speaker. There are a number of persons who have built in recent years that do not have cisterns attached to their homes. So even if they wanted an alternative, a water supply, they don't have that, Madam Speaker. And as an administration, we are not interested, Madam Speaker, in excuses, why it didn't happen, what could have happened. We want to ensure that water is prioritized. Every single member of Anguillan society has access to reliable water, Madam Speaker. We have the flexibility to be able to do it. We have the expertise, Madam Speaker, locally, both in government and outside of government to be able to do it. We are pulling all hands on deck to ensure that we utilize all the resources available to us to implement reliable, consistent water, that the production of water is consistent, that the holding of water is consistent as well, and we have all of the resources necessary to do that. But in addition to that, Madam Speaker, the minister also recognized that there were some limitations in relation to the act that governs water. And Madam Speaker, gone are the days when, you know, ministers recognize that there are challenges within various acts that are limiting our ability to do certain things, and we just allow it as is and say, well, that's what the law says or that's what the legislation says. Because the reality is, Madam Speaker, that in addition to being a member of the executive, we have an important role and function as members of the legislature. And while we may not draft the legislation ourselves, Madam Speaker, we are responsible for bringing and progressing legislation to the House, Madam Speaker. We're also responsible for determining the policy directions of any given administration. And so this administration is ensuring that we do all that is necessary to make the relevant policy decisions to make the relevant legislative changes to ensure that we deliver on what the people have elected us to do, Madam Speaker. And water remains a top priority. And this administration is full speed ahead and fully supporting the minister, Mr. Kyle Hodge, who is ensuring that water remains a priority. This, Madam Speaker, is both personal, but it is also of national interest because, as I said, I understand, and it is very, very critical and important, Madam Speaker, for members who are serving people to understand what the average man on the ground is facing. Because when you understand that, Madam Speaker, you understand the need to address situations actively and as quickly as possible. And we are not in the business of making excuses, Madam Speaker. We are in the business of aggressively working towards achieving all of the things that we've promised to our people with our people-first, people-focused agenda. So on this, our first anniversary in elected office, Madam Speaker, I wish to strongly support the amendments to this legislation that the Honorable Minister is bringing forth. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the honorable member for West End.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You mentioned from West End, and imagine the challenges if the water plant is in the valley, what it takes for it to get out to West End. And Madam Speaker, the key in government is that we've all given certain responsibilities or ministries or departments to run. And I quite often would have gotten phone calls for persons who don't have systems who need water. They need water. If there's no water in the schools will shut down. If there's no water in restaurants, they too will shut down. Same with hotels. When I get the call, I have to call the Honorable Kyle Hodge because he is the minister responsible for water. So I understand the challenges that he faces. But I think collectively, Madam Speaker, we know, I think anybody who's been involved in government knows that you can verbally promise somebody you can do something, but they really need to see and feel that something is done about it. So I must commend my colleague for the work that he's been doing in all fields, obviously in lands and acquisition. Water, though, it's a daily necessity. And we'll do what we can. We'll give him the support required, and I'm sure the House will give him the support that is required in order to deliver to our people, a key essential to our people. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I recognize the Honorable Single Island-wide Electoral District Member Bryan.
Start all over. Yes. So good morning again to all members of this House. And as I was saying that, I also stand in support of this bill because we've seen, as I said, the frustration. I've shown it to the Honorable Minister Hodge through the messages because especially in Long Bay, where I'm from, where I live, when water goes out, people text me and say, hey, water's not running. So I normally have to reach out to him and find out what's going on. So whatever legal framework that he needs to ensure that water development is going on its right path, I will always rise in support of this. It's good. Okay. And so this is a bill that I commend him and his team for, and to ensure that we continue to support him and his team as we develop water in Anguilla. And all I wanted to say, Madam Speaker, is that I stand in support of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Bryan. Unless there are any other contributions, I will invite the mover to reply, then we'll put this to a vote.
Madam Speaker, thank you. And I want to thank the members of this team. Thank you to those who spoke and also those who did not, because I also interpret silence as support. So, Madam Speaker, water is a very passionate area for me. I decided, and I stood in this house on the first day when we were swearing in, and I said that I love problems. You know, I love to solve problems, and I recognize over the years that water has always been a challenge for Anguilla, and it is high time that we immerse ourselves deeply into the issues surrounding water and stay there, stay immersed until we come up with a resolution, with a way forward. So, Madam Speaker, we are well on the way to rebuilding our water network, well on the way towards rebuilding the team at water, well on the way towards rebuilding even the office accommodation structure. And we are well on the way, Madam Speaker, as it relates to making these amendments to the legislation to making it more fit and proper for the structure at water. Madam Speaker, this is a four-pronged approach. Talk about walking and chewing gum at the same time. This is walking, chewing, talking, and jumping at the same time, Madam Speaker. Looking at all aspects of the Department of Water Services, from the human resource issues to the infrastructure and the production issues, to the distribution issues, to the office accommodation space issues. That building is on its way to being refurbished at the moment. The roof was demolished, and we are going upstairs, providing more adequate space for a growing team of water specialists, water engineers, the road crew, the administrative staff. So we are doing so many things all at once, Madam Speaker, as it relates to the Department of Water Services. Madam Speaker, I heard a quote that Mayor Matley would have said recently. She said, in politics, you have to feel people, you have to see people, and you have to hear them. And that quote stayed with me, Madam Speaker. I repeated it yesterday on Class FM, and it is a quote that I live by daily. We may not be able to solve all the problems at once, but if we have the basic understanding of this quote, being able to feel people, being able to feel what they're going through, being able to see them and recognize them and respect them, and being able to hear them, give them that listening ear as elected representatives, Madam Speaker. That is our duty to the people of Anguilla. So, Madam Speaker, as the Honorable Shelia Webster would have said, she is also living the experience of having rationed water. She's also living the experience, as many others throughout Anguilla, as it relates to water going off at a certain time. And she has a family. She's going through the experience that other families are going through. Same as me, Madam Speaker. I'm not connected to the system. I'm connected to water, to the Department of Water Services. So whenever water is off, I am on the phone. I'm so consumed with water that I feel as if I can be an engineer at this time. So, Madam Speaker, if this is what it takes to get water to the level where it's supposed to be at, where 24/7 we're supposed to be receiving water, this is what it takes, this is what we will do. So, Madam Speaker, this particular bill, these amendments to this bill does three things in principle. It clarifies the leadership structure of the Department of Water Services. It changes the chief engineer being the head of water, and it allows for the director of water to lead that vital utility, that most essential utility. It also strengthens the department's ability to recover costs when infrastructure is damaged. And that is a very technical term, Madam Speaker, when infrastructure is damaged. And what it means, really, Madam Speaker, it means when the infrastructure is tampered with, it means when the infrastructure is bypassed. We are speaking about meters. It means when meters are disconnected, are damaged, or otherwise interfered with. And we've heard, Madam Speaker, over the years that we have 80% non-revenue water. That 80% non-revenue water, Madam Speaker, a vast majority of it is due to unauthorized connections. And this legislation seeks to empower the Department of Water Services more, and it changes from criminalizing people for unauthorized connections to attributing a civil penalty to those illegal works. So it may seem as if we are softening the blow, but what it does, Madam Speaker, is it brings into focus the issues surrounding tampering, the issues surrounding bypassing, and the issues surrounding interfering with the infrastructure of water, which is a government infrastructure. So, Madam Speaker, I'm happy that we're able to bring this bill to this House and to receive bipartisan support for these amendments. And I want to thank both sides of this House for supporting these amendments. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Member. It has been moved and seconded that a bill shortly entitled A Bill for Water Services Department Amendment Act 2026 be read a second time and committed. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. I call upon the clerk to read the bill a second time.
Act to amend the Department of Water Services Act 2024.
Third reading. Oh, yeah, we have to do the committee. I apologize. I invite the member to move to the committee stage. Okay, I'm guided. It has been moved and seconded that this bill now stands committed to the Committee of the Whole House for consideration clause by clause.
Clauses 1 through 7.
I put the question that clauses 1 through 7 of this bill stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Clauses 1 through 7 stands part of the bill.
The title and enacting clause.
I put the question that the title and enacting clause does stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The title and enacting clause stands part of the bill.
Yeah, it's a short bill.
A very short bill. I apologize. This House now resumes its sitting. I invite the member to report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move. Madam Speaker, I beg to report that the bill shortly entitled A Bill for Department of Water Services Act 2026 has passed through committee stage without amendment and it's ready for its third reading.
A bill for Department of Water Services Amendment Act 2026, third reading.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the bill shortly entitled Department of Water Services Amendment Act be read a third time and pass.
Honorable members, the question before the Assembly is that the bill shortly entitled Department of Water Services Amendment Act 2026 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
Private members' bills, none. Private bills, none. Other orders of the day?
Honorable members, I am conscious that this would be our sitting preceding the celebrations for the centennial birthday of the late Mr. James Ronald Webster, which I understand will be celebrated on March 2nd. Mr. Webster, the first Chief Minister of Anguilla, guided our island through some of the most challenging and formative years. His leadership, courage, and unwavering commitment to the people of Anguilla set the foundation upon which our modern Anguilla was built. As we celebrate his centennial birthday, let us remember his sacrifice and the sacrifice of the band of pioneers who dared to envision and build a new Anguilla. We are the collective beneficiaries of their labor, and our children and grandchildren will continue to reap the fruits of their vision for generations to come. Let us also, as a house and as a membership, renew our collective commitment to that enduring vision of Anguilla, beautifully captured in the words of our national song written by Alex Richardson. With heart and soul, we'll build a nation proud, strong, and free. May God bless Anguilla, nurture, and keep her. And at this stage, I do invite any members to make any contributions as it respects to general orders of the day, if they so desire. I recognize the Honorable Member Vanterpool.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as we reflect on 1 year in office, I want to take this opportunity to say a genuine and heartfelt thank you to the people of Anguilla. Not just those who would have supported and voted for us as an administration, but for all of the people of Anguilla whom we represent and whom hold us accountable. For the honor, privilege, and confidence that you've bestowed in us, this administration, we say thank you. Madam Speaker, at this time, I would also like to say a thank you, as well as to commend our leader, the Honorable Premier, Mrs. Cora Richardson Hodge, for her steadfast yet caring direction and leadership, as well as the entire cabinet, for not only working together as a team, Madam Speaker, but for what I honestly can describe, based on our 1 year in office, is coming together as a family. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to serve alongside each and every one of you. And I look forward to working with you to continue to build Anguilla and renew our commitment to putting people first. Madam Speaker, I want to use this opportunity to inform the general public, not just persons who would have supported the Anguilla United Front, but all of the people of Anguilla at large, that this Saturday at 1 p.m., we'll be having a family fun day at Shoal Bay Beach. So if you're able and want to come, we invite you to bring something as we all gather together in a day of unity, fellowship, and merriment, Madam Speaker. A day of celebration of this milestone and a day where we look forward to the future ahead. Also, Madam Speaker, the Honorable Kyle Hodge would have mentioned earlier in his presentation that myself, along with the Honorable Minister of Tourism, as well as a delegation comprised of representatives from my ministry, as well as the Anguilla Tourist Board, will be traveling this weekend to attend Roots Americas, which takes place next week in Brazil. At this conference, Madam Speaker, we look forward to engaging not only with existing stakeholders, but potential new stakeholders on how we can work on building our existing relationships, as well as partner to create new opportunities, as well as improved access and increased numbers to our island, Anguilla. So we look forward to embarking on this endeavor on behalf of the people of Anguilla next week. So while we won't be here for some of the centennial festivities for the father of the nation, we want to join you in taking this moment to acknowledge the contributions that he, as well as the other revolutionaries, have made that have gotten us this far. we encourage as many persons as possible to come out and participate, and in doing so, reflect and ask yourself, what is it that you too can do for your country? And Madam Speaker, we look forward to continuing the work that has been laid before us as we move the baton forward and we continue to move Anguilla forward. Madam Speaker, may God continue to bless us all, and may God continue to bless Anguilla. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any other orders of the day? I recognize the Honorable Member for West End.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my honorable colleague, Evans McLeod Rogers, often refers to himself as the senior in the House. And again, that should not be overlooked, because when we talk about history, everybody has their depiction or their story of history. But in Anguilla's history, we will talk about the Anguilla Revolution, which was back in the 60s. The fact is, Madam Speaker, I remember as a youngster, 8 years old, when the call was for women and children on the front line. And it's ironic that as we celebrate what would have been 100 years of the father of the nation, Ronald Webster, we are celebrating within 2 days, or 4 days, in fact, Madam Speaker, the first female premier of Anguilla. So I think quite often when history is written, there are always individuals that stand out. Someone has to be the one that would be play the pivotal role, whether in success or failure. And I think it is quite ironic that at this point in time, as we celebrate our first year in office, or our first year anniversary, that it's unfortunate the Premier is not here today, but the fact is that she's actually on duty, so it's not as if she's on holiday. The fact is, Madam Speaker, as we celebrate, my colleague mentioned that we will be away doing some work, making sure that Anguilla continues to grow as we go to roots down in Brazil. Now, boat racing is the national sport of Anguilla, and on the 2nd of March, a number of the Class B boats will be racing around the island. So it's a shame that I won't be there. As you know, I'm a die-hard boat racing fan, but it is another way of our people showing or tying in the two. In the past, the boat race around the island was centered mainly for the Class A boats, the bigger boats. But the boat racing fraternity saw it fit that when you talk about the father of the nation, to go around the island is almost as if you're embracing this beautiful island that we call home. Madam Speaker, first anniversary, again, as I said, of this new term. So I owe a great deal to the people of West End, District 7, who saw it fit in me for a 3rd consecutive term to have me as their representative. So I look forward to continuing to represent the people that have entrusted their faith in me. And although I won't be here over the weekend, I encourage all to come out, and it's not about politics. It is about making sure that the people of Anguilla can come together and have a long celebration, celebrate the positives. So, Madam Speaker, I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, and I also bid you and Mr. Vanderpool safe travels next week as you represent Anguilla.
Madam Speaker, having just got back from Bermuda, I want to bring congratulatory remarks from the Speaker of the House. I think both you and Joash, who went to represent us, you did that with flying colors. Nothing but positive. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. And I heard that that Speaker Lister discovered an Anguillian cousin while you were there as well. So we have deeper connections. Thank you for that.
But that is the Caribbean, Madam Speaker. That's why you should not say anything negative about anybody. Mm-hmm. And there was what was very interesting there, Madam Speaker. You'll probably see it on social media at some point in time. There was a coming together of people that understands we can agree to disagree on certain issues. In fact, you probably don't disagree on issues, but the general public at times would want to pit one against the other. So I wait for that to come out, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Any other orders of the day? I recognize the Honourable Member for Valley North.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I first rise to acknowledge the anniversary that is coming up shortly of the Honorable Father of the Nation, Mr. James Ronald Webster, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I always commend Mr. Webster for the work that he did to ensure that we could have today a thriving public sector. Mr. Webster saw very early that Anguilla could run its own affairs. He recognized the importance of having a strong, vibrant public service to be able to facilitate the overall development of this country. And I think that his vision has been realized to a large degree in the many public sector institutions that have been developed over the last 30, 40 to 50 years. Madam Speaker, I also want to commend Mrs. Sandra Foy at the Department of Education and her entire team for the outstanding parade that was organized a few days ago by the Department of Education. I want to thank the parents who allowed their students to participate in the march, but also to the students, the teachers at the various schools who took on the challenge of creating the creative wear and really allowing for an opportunity for education to celebrate Mr. Webster. Outside of that, on a yearly basis, education, the Department of Youth and Culture have always ensured that we've done something to celebrate Mr. Webster, whether that has been writing competitions, singing competitions that have been done in the past, many different things, Madam Speaker, because we recognize that while we can acknowledge and understand the work of Mr. Webster, we also have a responsibility to ensure that other generations understand the importance of Mr. Webster's legacy and what he has contributed to what now is quite a large public sector. So I want to acknowledge that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at this time, I also wish to express profound gratitude to the people of Valley North for the opportunity that they gave to me 1 year ago. I do not take this responsibility lightly, Madam Speaker. When I reflect on this past year, I do not measure success only by the policies passed and the meetings held. My greatest success lies in the lives we have touched together. It is in the young persons that I have helped to navigate the complex scholarship application processes, students who once felt overwhelmed, but now confidently stand on the threshold of opportunity. It is in the employee who was not fairly compensated and finally received justice. It is in the lives saved through access to overseas medical treatment, families who were given the hope that they needed. These moments remind me, Madam Speaker, that leadership is not in titles, but it is in service. I am grateful for the implementation of the Festivals Commission, which strengthens our cultural identity and creates opportunity for the creatives and communities. I am proud of the investments in education that are shaping brighter futures for our children. I am thankful for the continued support that we've been able to provide to preschool teachers who lay the foundation on which this nation is built. Madam Speaker, the road has been long and hard. There have been challenges, difficult conversations, and obstacles to overcome. But through it all, I have remained guided by a simple commitment to serve with integrity, compassion, and determination. I wish to once again thank the people of Valley North for the opportunity to serve. I also wish to put on record, Madam Speaker, I wish to put on record my gratitude to the entire Anguilla United Front family for their trust and faith. Madam Speaker, we serve under the leadership of the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, an individual who continuously acknowledges our individual strengths, pushes us to be the best version of ourselves, and allows us to be exactly who we are. That type of leadership, Madam Speaker, is absolutely remarkable. I also want to thank my colleagues for their trust, their support, for understanding, Madam Speaker, that when I often push them, it is that I am pushing towards success. And I understand the importance of keeping each other accountable to the people that we are elected to serve. And Madam Speaker, I want to thank Anguilla generally for the faith and the overwhelming level of support that they gave to us over a year ago. We remain committed to putting people first. Despite the challenges, despite the distractions, we are laser focused, Madam Speaker, on serving and the road ahead. Madam Speaker, I also wish to put on record my sincerest gratitude to my ministry team. My permanent secretary has been outstanding. Dr. Bonnie Richardson Lake has been outstanding in my transition process, Madam Speaker, but also in helping me to progress key pieces of legislation, supporting submissions, even emergency submissions to Executive Council, and understanding, Madam Speaker, that though we may not always agree, that it is always important to have and operate in an environment of mutual respect, honesty, and trust. And Madam Speaker, in the current climate, those key things are critically important. I also wish to thank the department heads and the department staff across the Ministry of Social Development, Education, Youth and Culture, Library Services, and Probation for the hard work that they undertake every single day. They undertake work every single day, Madam Speaker, with limited budgets, less than desirable working facilities, and equipment in some cases, Madam Speaker. In other cases, they don't have the requisite manpower, Madam Speaker, that they wish to have to achieve some of the things that they achieve. But in spite of that, Madam Speaker, I have some outstanding members of my team that come to work every single day and push for progress. And I am very, very grateful for that. Madam Speaker, as I look to the next 4 years, I am hopeful. I am energized. I'm in a competitive spirit. And when I'm in a competitive spirit, Madam Speaker, it means that I am ready to win. I am ready to win, Madam Speaker. My team is ready to win. And a win for myself and my team, Madam Speaker, is a win for the people of Anguilla. So once again, Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity here today. And I again thank the people of Valley North for their continued prayers and support every aspect of this journey, because I couldn't have done it without them. So I invite everyone to come out and support and celebrate with us on Saturday on Shoal Bay Beach, west of Ola's Tacos, as we celebrate 1 year, as we engage with our people, as we eat, drink, and be merry. All are invited to attend. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member. Are there any other members wishing to speak? Adjournment? Oh, I recognize the Honorable Single Island Wide Electoral District Member Bryan.
Good. Okay. I also rise and I would like to acknowledge the birthday of Honorable James Ronald Webster that's coming up. And I invite the general public of Anguilla to go out and support all the activities that are taking place for his birthday celebration. Madam Speaker, as we celebrate our first year as the government of Anguilla, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the people of Anguilla for giving us an opportunity to lead Anguilla forward and the development of our people in general. We are leading under the leadership of a woman that is a warrior and is very positive of the team she has along her side, and that is the Honorable Premier, Mr. Scorer Richardson Hodge. We are very thankful for her leadership and her guidance, especially for me as the eldest member of the team, will say, as a rookie. Her positive energy and her guidance are well received, and it helps me as I developed as a young parliamentarian. I would also like to put on record my thanks to my colleagues, other ministers, for their support as we carry along this journey in leading Anguilla and its people's development. This year was filled with many ups and downs, but there wasn't anything that couldn't be overcome for the benefit of the people of Anguilla. And that's what I, and I'm sure my colleagues as well, will continue to do. Any challenges that are faced, we will overcome it because we are committed to ensuring that the people of Anguilla receive all the benefit of any development that is indeed for them. We are a small island with huge potential. It's a matter of every single Anguillian to understand who we are and where we would like to be, no matter what government is in power. It's as a leader, when you speak, for example, of youth development or supporting youth, you have to make sure that what you speak about is also demonstrated in the actions that you exhibit in the general public and what you do. So, Madam Speaker, this year has been wonderful for me as a young parliamentarian and part of the government, and I want the people of Anguilla to understand that we will continue to work hard and diligently to ensure that we deliver for them and for their best interest. Madam Speaker, tomorrow, the Dominican Republic is celebrating 182 years of independence. And I would like to use this moment to extend some words to them in Spanish with your permission.
Unless anyone has an objection in terms of translation, I don't have a difficulty with it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Proceed.
Queridos dominicanos residentes en Anguilla, mañana celebramos 182 años de independencia, lejos de casa natal, con grande esperanza en tu nuevo hogar, Anguilla. Conozco los desafíos a los que nos enfrentan o a los que se enfrentan, pero nada que no podamos superar con dedicación, consistencia y determinación. Agradezco a ustedes también por ser parte de los que contribuyeron a que hoy yo sea uno de los representantes en el Parlamento de Anguilla. Mañana, 27 de febrero, nos vamos a reunir en el Coronation Park, o el Play, como comúnmente lo llamamos, y les invito a que asistan con orgullo y sus tricolores, representando su dominicanidad. Vamos a compartir, a disfrutar y recordar lo lindo que es ser dominicano, aunque estemos residiendo fuera de nuestro país. Felicidades a todos por 182 años de independencia y continuamos creciendo. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Can I trouble you to summarize the translation? I know that you were speaking from the heart, but in terms of translating just what you communicated, just for the public to know.
Absolutely, Madam Speaker. Dear Dominicanos residents in Anguilla, tomorrow we celebrate 182 years of independence, far from home, from natal home, but with great hope in your new home, which is Anguilla. I understand the challenges that you face, but nothing that you cannot overcome with dedication, consistency, and determination. I thank you as well for being part of the people that contributed that today I am one of the representatives in the Parliament of Anguilla. Tomorrow, 27th of February, we will gather in the Coronation Park, or El Play as we commonly call it. And I invite you to attend with pride and your three colors representing your Dominicanidad or Dominican representation. We will share, enjoy, and remember how beautiful it is to be a Dominicano as well.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any other contributions? I recognize the Honorable Member for Valley South, and then I recognize the Honorable Member for Road South thereafter.
Madam Speaker, today marks 1 year of service in Valley South. So to the people of Anguilla and the place they trust in me and the confidence to serve. This milestone belongs to you. Support, your voices, and the belief in our shared vision and what makes this journey meaningful. Every step taken this past year has been with you in mind, Valley South, your families, your future, and the continued progress of this island. I would like to place on record and thank you for the opportunity to serve. I remain committed, humble, energized, and ready to keep working on your behalf. I thank you for the opportunity. Also, I'd like to thank the staff in the Ministry of Infrastructure. Like most people would know, I'm spread across 2 ministries, and also the staff of in the Ministry of Natural Resources. To the team, I call it the Dream Team. Over the past year, we have celebrated our successes and continued serving our people with dedication and integrity. Through every step of the journey, our connection and unity have only grown stronger as a team, and I'm truly grateful and thankful for that. So I'd like to say congratulations as well to the fellow ministers as we continue this important journey and as we continue to serve our country, Anguilla. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. First and foremost, I too would like to join all the colleagues in extending gratitude to the people of Road South for their continued confidence in me, in placing me in this parliament. This is my 3rd time sitting in parliament, 1st time in opposition. So I'm eternally grateful to you, and I look forward to continue to serve you. And this evening, Madam Speaker, at 5:30, the Honorable Curtis Richardson, Mr. Johan Romney, and I will be conducting a town hall. It won't be broadcast live, but everybody is invited, and it's about violence, and especially among our young men. And I invite everyone to attend, to give of your thoughts, your views, and how we can mitigate it. I know we've had a lot of work that has been done traversing many administrations. The last anti-violence campaign that was chaired by the Honorable Merrick Richardson. But this is community. We have
Tell them the time and the place.
5:30 this afternoon at Corkley's Place, next to the Blue Point Youth Development Center. We've lost 2 young men recently, very young men, onto the scourge of gun violence in the Road South community. One was just 19 years old with a newborn, and the other one was 26 years old. And as you know, it's a very small, tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody. And the persons who have done these crimes are still outstanding. But before that, there are many instances of gun violence, not only across the wider Anguillan community, but definitely in Road South, in particular Blowing Point, where a lot of young men, starting way back in 2005, have lost their lives to that scourge of gun violence. And, but I didn't really have an intention to speak, but Mr. Brian Jason, he spoke, and I could pick a few words out of his Spanish text, and it was important what he said. They're celebrating the independence of the Dominican Republic, the independence of the Dominican Republic. And we're here today, all revering the Honorable Father of the Nation, the Honorable James Ronald Webster, and speaking about him in glowing terms. But James Ronald Webster did not seek to just separate from St. Kitts Nevis. His vision was for the independence of Anguilla, the political and constitutional independence from Great Britain of Anguilla. So much so, Madam Speaker, that in one of his final letters that he penned to any leader of Anguilla was penned to the Honorable Chief Minister, Mr. Hubert Benjamin Hughes, in 2010, where he outlined in his own writing, he was a masterful writer, in his own writing, that the vision of this revolution was not merely to become a colony of the United Kingdom, was to become a free and independent republic. There was a time when we had our Republic of Anguilla flag, we had our ambassadors in place. Jerry Meyer Gums was one of our ambassadors, and that is the direction in which we were going, Madam Speaker. And I would urge the people of Anguilla, in particular the young people, to look towards that ideal, the ideal of James Ronald Webster and those forefathers that came before us. And hopefully that this time, this period, between now and 2030, we will set the plan forward to ensure that within short order, we move from being a colony of England. And I say that without reservation. We're not an overseas territory. We are a colony with all the colonial trappings of England. We need to move away from being a colony of England to being the smallest independent country in the world, well, next to the Vatican, if you want to call that an independent country. But the smallest independent country next to St. Kitts, which is the smallest independent country in the world. And we need to move there speedily, because there's absolutely zero reasons why I can see that we remain a colony of England. So, Madam Speaker, again, I want to thank the people of Road South and the people of Anguilla in particular, and I hope that the last gun-related violence that happened in Anguilla is the very last. And I wish everybody a wonderful James Ronald Webster holiday, and may God continue to rain his blessings on the independent Republic of Anguilla.
Honorable Member for Road North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And good afternoon to all those who are still with us. And good afternoon to everyone here in this honorable house. Madam Speaker, I'll first start by extending condolences from my family to the family of the late Mary Gomes of North Hill, who's a neighbor, family friend, and also family. And when you come from a small-knit community like mine, as North Hill is, even if you're not related, you're related. But we are related, and I want to offer condolences to her daughter Vandra, her brother, her nephews and nieces, and all who mourn her passing at this time. Madam Speaker, on this first anniversary of the 2025 elections, I would like to give my utmost gratitude to the people of Road North for seeing fit to elect me for a second term in this honorable house. I was having a conversation with a friend, a cousin of mine yesterday, speaking about the possibility of certain actions that I might take of it damaging my political career. And my response to her was, I really don't care about my political career, because before 2020 and 2025, before those election wins, they don't even register in the top 10 of my accomplishments in life, if I be totally honest. And if I was to lose an election, whenever it may be in the future, that would not register as my top 10 losses, because there's a lot more things that is very, very important to me. But why I do register high, and like I said, I don't really rate my political career very high, but my representation of the people, that is rated very, very high. Because I think persons sometimes mix up your representation with being political. And your political life, sometimes you might have to jump through hoops to please people and say certain things and always be quote unquote like. But if you're representing persons, you represent persons to the best of your ability, whether it, irk some people, whether it make people feel uncomfortable, you do your best to represent the people that you've been elected to represent. So with that said, on this first anniversary of the 2025 general elections, I want to reaffirm to the people of North Hill, Sandy Ground, Water Swamp, and Backstreet South Hill, that I am your representative, and I will be your representative for as long as you want me. And I take that to heart, and whatever the case may be, I will be representing you, and by you, the people, those people of Road North, by extension, the people of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, also on Monday coming up, we would be celebrating the 100th birthday of the father of our nation, Mr. Ronald Webster. I had the pleasure of viewing the parade that was held in his honor a couple of days ago on Tuesday morning. I was pleased by the turnout of the schools. I was very, very pleased by the turnout of the schools. I was immensely impressed by the steel pan orchestra from the Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive School. They had me shaking my two bad knees. That's how great their music was. But Madam Speaker, and this is without me seeing, I've heard other persons saying that there's events coming up, and I'll say publicly, this is without me seeing the itinerary of events that's coming up. It feels to me, and again I said I'm not afraid of speaking my truth. It feels to me like what would have been the 100th birthday of the father of our nation, who speakers before me have said we practically owe us being here to him, who, when you go through the records of the history of Anguilla, if it were not for him, where would we have been? Not only as parliamentarians, but as a nation. Might have been no Anguilla, or we might have been 20 years back. But it feels to me that for somebody who's supposed to be so celebrated, so revered in the history of Anguilla, that these celebrations, which would have been his 100th birthday, seems a bit mute to me. And the idea say, we can do better, Anguilla. We can do better. So let us keep being united. Let us keep being together. But we also have to remember where we came from. And if we start to forget quickly from where we came from, then we're going to have issues on where we're going. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. I recognize Member Hodge.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too rise to share a few things. And I want to say, Madam Speaker, this weekend coming up, it's a very jam-packed weekend with the anniversary celebration of the Anguilla United Front. But a very important milestone in the 100th year celebration of the father of the nation, the Honorable James Ronald Webster. And this weekend, this Sunday, there's a national service for Mr. James Ronald Webster, and it will take place at the Church of God of Holiness at 4 p.m. So all are invited to attend this national service. And also on Monday, there'll be a wreath laying and firework display Monday evening at the mausoleum. So those are two important events happening over this long holiday weekend to celebrate the 100th birthday celebration of Mr. Webster. Madam Speaker, I want to commend the Minister of Education and her team for the great organization and display for this celebration, a very special celebration. And I believe, Madam Speaker, it sets the bar for how we should celebrate the father of the nation on an annual basis. So perhaps we needed to come to the 100th to recognize that on an annual basis, we need to be displaying national pride. We need to be educating our children, because I'm sure for those children that took part in this parade, it had to be a learning experience. It had to be a great experience of patriotism and national pride. And if it is anything that we need to instill in our young people on a daily basis, on an annual basis, is national pride. So I want to commend the team at the Department of Education and the ministry, and I want to encourage them to have this be something that is annual for the benefit of generations to come, so that the lessons of our history continue to be taught. And Madam Speaker, I want to thank, as we celebrate 1 year in office, I want to thank the people of Anguilla for electing me twice as an island-wide candidate. I am forever grateful for their support over these last 2 elections. And I want to thank my team under the leadership of the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge for placing the confidence in me to serve as the Minister of Economic Development, Lands and Planning, Natural Resources and Water. And I thank all of my colleagues as well for their assistance. Such a great spirit over here, Madam Speaker. And this is not to throw shade on nobody else, but there's such a great spirit of collaboration, such a great spirit of competitiveness, as the minister would have mentioned. And I want to believe that the most competitive people, Madam Speaker, came from Stony Ground. And the most competitive people came from Aurelia Kelly Primary School, formerly known as Stony Ground Primary School. I don't know what school you went, Madam Speaker.
Right on the point of order.
But, you know. And I also want to believe the most competitive people came from Yellow House. So
Madam Speaker, on a point of order.
I don't want us to be here all day now. So, Madam Speaker, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to give some brief remarks at the end of the House.
Thank you, member. A little levity is good. Unless there's anything further, before we close off, I do want to put my amazing clerk on the spot. He's absolutely dapper today because today is Anguilla, his daughter's 12th birthday. So congratulate him when you're on your way out. He's a model girl dad. So congratulations to Anguilla's 12th. She's a baby of the house, so we treat her as an extension of all of us. Unless there's anything else, I invite a member to move for the adjournment. I understand that we are intending to adjourn to next Tuesday. Mover.
Madam Speaker, I rise to move that the House be adjourned until March 3rd, 2026.
Seconder.
I rise to second, Madam Speaker.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded that this House stands adjourned to March 3rd at 10 a.m. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. This House stands adjourned to March 3rd. Have a blessed rest of your weekend.